Alright class, happy Monday. Hope you guys had a wonderful weekend, even though it's not what a usual weekend would look like. Today's March 23. The learning target for both today and tomorrow, it's going to remain the same, is to explain how absolutism developed our last place for this unit in Russia. And the last Rate the Ruler we'll do is about Peter the Great, and that's who we will talk about today and tomorrow. Here's a plan for today. First, on Google Classroom, there is going to be a short survey, Google form, that I need you to fill out. It is not graded, but it needs to be done by 3 p.m. today. It should not take you any more than 2-3 minutes to do. Along with that, I just want to make something clear. This has only happened with a few people, but it's driving me nuts. If there is something that you do during this online learning experience that doesn't make sense, you're confused, you don't understand what absolutism is, you don't understand what something looks like when we talk about England, whatever that may be, it is okay if you're confused about it. It doesn't make sense. It is not okay for you to turn in work that simply says, I don't know, or I'm confused, so here's a random guess. I am here to answer as many questions as possible, especially between 10 and 3. We can do that through email, through Google Classroom, private comments. We can even do a special Google Hangout session or something like that. Like, there is no excuse to simply say, I don't know, or I'm confused, and then not do anything about it. Not understanding is fine. It happens. It's hard for me to communicate this way. But doing nothing about it is simply being lazy. So please don't do that. Ask for help. That's your responsibility as a student. So do the survey. Shouldn't take you long. The second thing you'll want to do is an open note quiz. It's another Google form. You are allowed to use notes for this. I'll explain more details in a little bit. Just know that it's graded. When you're done with that quiz, we will talk and take some notes about Peter the Great. It's going to be a little bit longer than usual. I apologize for that. I'm trying to give you as much information up front before you start your last Rate the Ruler assignment for this unit, which is one on Peter the Great. After I explain details on that, I'll explain what the rest of the week should look like if things all go according to plan. Your homework then for today, 3 p.m., is to 1. Do the survey, and 2. Take that open note quiz that's due by 3 p.m. Later this week, and it says here Tuesday 3 p.m., but I'm going to change that to be Wednesday 10 a.m. However, I would really like you to have this done by Tuesday 3 p.m. It makes grading a lot easier for me. You're going to have this Rate the Ruler due. So it's not due today. You will have today and tomorrow to work on it. Once again, Wednesday, 10 a.m. That's the due date. But try to have it done Tuesday, 3 p.m. if you can. So after you do that short survey, you will then be taking an open note quiz. That quiz is not going in as a quiz grade because that makes no sense to give you a traditional quiz when you're at home and nobody's there to supervise you. So it's just a classwork grade, and I will allow you to use your notes. It's due today at 3 p.m. However, even though you can use your notes, I do not want you to Google things, and I don't want you to look up answers or work with a partner. Just do it on your own. What you might want to do before you take it is maybe review quiz a little bit, do a couple of review quizzes, make sure you have all your notes organized. The quiz will cover 1. The basics of absolutism. What is it? What does germs stand for? How does it work? Things like divine right theory. It will then talk about absolutism in 3 places. First, Philip II in Spain. Second, Louis XIV in France. And lastly, absolutism in England, which is what we talked about last week when we started this whole online learning experience. So make sure you have whatever notes you need ready for that. I would recommend taking this quiz, so pausing the video right now, taking the quiz whenever you're ready, and then doing all the stuff about Peter the Great after your quiz. Your quiz will not cover Austria, Prussia, Maria Theresa, the 30 Years' War, Frederick the Great. It's not going to cover any of that, and it's not going to cover anything about Peter the Great in Russia that we talk about today. So maybe pausing the video, taking the quiz. That way you don't have all this Russia information in your head, which might not help you focus when you take this quiz. So once again, 15 points, classwork grade, due by 3 p.m. today. So we're going to talk about Peter the Great. Peter the Great was a ruler, an absolute ruler in Russia at this time. I'm going to post on your Rate the Ruler assignment a video that gives kind of a biography of Peter the Great. You may use that video as one of the 3 sources. However, you can't just cite and say video. You actually have to put the link to the video when you cite, copy paste the URL on the Rate the Ruler assignment. Don't just say video. So we were talking about Russia. We've kind of worked our way going from west to east here across Europe. Before Peter the Great, in the early 1600s, which is about the time all of this absolutism is going on, Russia was going through a time period that's known as the Time of Troubles. As you can tell, that's not great. What's happening in Russia is, one, it's falling behind the rest of Europe. It's not very modern. Its technology, its ideas are old-fashioned. Basically, they're stuck in the Middle Ages. They haven't moved forward yet the way other European countries like England, like France, like Spain have. Also, it's very isolated from other parts of Europe. They're not being able to learn from other parts, England, France, and Spain. There's disorder, and since Russia's so big, there's lots of invasions because it's weak, and people are attacking it and making things very difficult. So for all these reasons, the Time of Troubles is happening until enter Peter the Great. You don't have to memorize this date, but we're talking about 1682 when he takes over, and he helps change Russia for the better away from this time of troubles where they're not modernized, they're very isolated, and things are getting chaotic with invasions and disorder. So Peter the Great was not someone who was particularly educated. Realized Russia is isolated, so education as a whole in Russia is not great, and that applies to Peter the Great too. But he's very curious and he wants to learn. As a result, what he does is he takes this trip to Western Europe, places like Germany, France, England, and Spain, to learn about their culture and their technology, because these are things they are not learning in Russia. He decides to leave, go on this big trip, learn from all these places in Western Europe, come back to Russia, and help them follow suit, which is something called Westernization, which will be a vocab word we talk about in just a second. So here's a map at the bottom. This is his trip from Russia. Okay, the map is a little skewed, so it's going to look a little funny, but he's going all the way to Britain and back, and on his trip he is picking up what's the culture look like here? What types of technology do we have here? What are some ideas that are being used in France, England, Spain, and Germany that I can take back with me to Russia to make us more modernized, less isolated, and overall just more successful and prosperous? Right, so Westernization, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's a process, the adoption of a Western, and when we say Western, we're talking about places like England, Spain, the United States would qualify as being part of Western culture. These ideas, technology, and their culture. So we're not borrowing ideas from places in Asia or the Middle East or Africa. It's more focused on Western Europe and then North America and South America even too as well. Right, so this orange, darker orange shaded region here, that's what the Russian Empire looks like at the start of Peter the Great's reign. This purple part is land that he adds during his rule. Once again, this is just the route that he takes going into Western Europe and back. So here's some of the battles he fought. This is just a map to show you where we're talking about. We can see he takes over land on the other side of Russia too, this purple shaded region here. This would be one way he's an absolute ruler and strengthens his power, by adding land on both sides of his empire to increase his power. So here are the goals he has for Russia, some of which he meets, some of them he doesn't, some of them he meets kind of halfway with various levels of success. So one, he wants to strengthen Russian borders and their military. That map I just showed you would be a pretty good example of how he does that. Second, I apologize for the typo, he wants to unite Russia under his control, which is something he does similar to other rulers but with a different religion. So instead of with the Catholic Church or the Puritan Church or the Protestant Church, Russia is united under the Russian Orthodox Church. also to unite Russia, not just religiously, but socially, the Essen germs. He forces a group of people known as the boyars, who are the nobles, the upper class people in Russia. He forces them to serve the government, which is just another way to make sure that everyone is loyal to the state by forcing the more powerful people to serve it. For the other people, he also makes them loyal to the state by expanding serfdom. And we talked about the idea of serfs back in our unit on the Middle Ages. The serfs are the peasants. They're doing all the work, like farming. These are middle, low-class people. So we've got all these different social classes and the religion being united under the rule and control of Peter the Great. Another goal is westernization, which we talked about before. Here are some specific examples of how he tries to shape and form Russia to be more like the Western world, which once again at the time, places like England, Germany, Spain, and France. So one thing is the culture part. Culture is your way of life, so appearance and dress is part of that. So he forces Russian nobles to shave their beards and wear clothes that people in France and Spain and so on would wear. Western European clothes. This is part of culture. He has dances similar to what they would have in Western Europe, which are these big parties and dances where not just men, but also women, a mixed gender party. These are based off of the idea of salons, which are in France, which we'll talk about in our next unit on the Enlightenment. And just like how France had the Palace of Versailles, Russia has its own center of culture and power, similar to Versailles. That is the city of St. Petersburg. And you'll notice that St. Petersburg is named after Peter the Great. And it's just meant to be the symbol of wealth and culture, and the fact that Russia has arrived and has caught up with the rest of Western Europe. Here's a picture of somebody's beard getting cut off with a pair of scissors. Right, so St. Petersburg, similar to the Palace of Versailles, symbol of wealth, power, and culture. Here's just a layout of what that would have looked like. So again, this was done under the direction of Peter the Great and named after him. Another goal he has is not just to westernize, not just to unite Europe, or Russia, culturally and socially, but also to expand it economically. Ways he does this. Instead of Russia being isolated and separate from the rest of the world, he creates a mercantile-based economy. Mercantile is a word we had in a previous unit. It means it's based on trade. If you are trading with other groups and places, that means you are no longer isolated. You're not just trading goods, you're exchanging ideas and cultures as well. That expands wealth. Also, he seeks to find, for this trade-based, mercantile-based economy, a port that is a warm water port. Warm water port means it is open year-round. Realize Russia is up north. It gets very cold. Certain ports along certain bodies of water will freeze, and therefore you are no longer able to trade there. He is trying to find a port that will be open year-round, a warm water port. He was not successful in doing this. He never actually claims a warm water port. But person after him, Catherine the Great, who we'll talk about later this week, does finish off that part of his legacy for him, even though he fails to claim that port. Port's going to be down here if you can follow my cursor. Okay, so that should, I've given you examples in germs, get you started with your Rate the Ruler assignment. However, just the notes we took is by no means enough to finish the whole thing. You have to do research on your own. Here's what I'm expecting from you. Just like before, research reliable sources. I have put a link to SweetSearch on the actual assignment. Some people are using sources from places like Prezi, places like Weebly, places that are like personal blog sites. That information there might be accurate, but the source is definitely not reliable, so please use SweetSearch to find your information. Just like with before, you need multiple examples, 2 or more, of how he has controlled the government, economy, religion, military, and society of Russia. Okay? This doesn't mean they're good things, it's just things that are how he's trying to control and give himself more power. Again, it's not just what he's doing, but also how he's doing it too. You then need to come up with that pros cons list. Use your germs chart to do that. I am looking not just for multiple examples, but several examples. Realize it doesn't have to be the same number on both sides. He might have more positives than negatives or vice versa. But I am looking for you, bare minimum 4, preferably more than 4 examples of how things were good, positive, or bad, negative during the reign of Peter the Great in Russia. Once again, if you do good research in the germs chart, like that part should be pretty easy because you already know what he's done and why he's done it. You just gotta fill in that chart based on what you already know. This is once again being due Wednesday 10 a.m., not at Tuesday 3 p.m. anymore. Also, I'm attaching on this assignment the video about his biography and a PDF that has the textbook pages 431 to 435. I'm hoping you'll be able to read those just fine. You may use your textbook pages as one of the minimum 3 sources. You may use that video as one of the 3 sources. However, don't just say textbook, don't just say video. For the textbook, tell me the page numbers you used. For the video, put the actual link there. You are then encouraged to use other sources besides that. This video and the notes we just took does not count as one of those 3 sources. Realize I'm asking a minimum of 3. It would be a good idea to have more than 3. But that would be following rule number 1, doing your best. Real quick then to end, for the rest of this week, we're doing this Peter the Great, Rate the Ruler. You will have one more open note quiz, just like you had before, on Austria, Prussia, and Russia. You will then be starting a project. I am not sure yet whether or not I will make that project a test grade or a quiz grade. Next week, you will be having some form of test. It's not going to be like multiple choice true or false. It's probably going to be more open-ended response questions where you take what you've learned and apply it in some way, shape, or form. I would look through your essential questions for this unit because chances are many of those questions will come from there. Once again, don't hesitate to ask me with questions. Also, on a final note, I know this is not an ideal situation. Please know that I am praying for you, but I would like to challenge you to pray for 3 different groups of people in particular in the WMC community. The first is our school's administration, Pastor Greer, Dr. Taylor, Mr. Gruppen, the school board. These people are making decisions as they get information. This is unprecedented. We've never experienced something like this. There's a lot of pressure on them. And many of these decisions are made by other people and it's out of their control. So please pray for God's wisdom and guidance as they make these tough decisions for what school looks like moving forward this year. Second group to pray for, our international students, whether they're from Spain, Vietnam, China, South Africa. There's a lot of uncertainty here at home. Just imagine what you're feeling when your family and your home is somewhere else and there's uncertainty there too. I know 2 of our Spanish international students are flying home. They flew home today, which is Sunday, but also Monday as well. Spain is dealing with this more severely than we are right now. They had to leave to go home because they were not certain if they would be able to get home another way. So please pray for your international classmates, that God's comfort and peace and healing will be on them, whether they're in the United States or whether they're going home, or whether they just have families and friends at home. Last group would be the seniors. This is not the way that they envisioned their last trimester of their high school careers. Many seniors are missing out on opportunities like athletics, arts. Luckily, we were able to perform the musical, but we still have choir and band performances that are getting canceled. We don't know what the spring sports season look like quite yet, but it's not looking great. Things like prom that they're missing, graduation, what does that ceremony look like? Our governor has promised they'll be able to graduate, but do they get kind of the graduation ceremony? Who knows? Just realize that's a big disappointment for them that they're missing out on those opportunities and experiences. So please pray that God still is in complete control here, even though things aren't going according to plan. Let me know if you have questions. Hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.